and welcome to my 6th vlog. Today we will be going over the results of the wood study. The wood has been weathering for 56 days from September 20th till November 15th.
We will begin our examination with oak. To refresh your memory, I have 4 pieces of oak. 1 unfinished, 1 varnished, 1 bleached, and 1 bleached and varnished. The unfinished oak lost some of its color, and the grain became more accentuated. It also got quite rough, and had some minor mold growth. The varnished oak did not have a noticeable change, except a slight yellowing in color. I noticed this with most of the varnished pieces. This piece also got some mold or dirt on the top side of it. The bleached oak had significant mold growth on it, and like the other unvarnished oak piece, it got much more rough. The varnished bleached oak did not have any noticeable changes. Both varnished pieces maintained their smoothness. As we look at the oak overview again, you can see the correlation between the mold growing on oak 3 and the color difference in the grain before it was bleached. For teak, we just had 1 unfinished and 1 varnished. The grain on the unfinished teak became much more noticeable, and the texture became rougher, especially at the ends. However, the teak is less rough than most of the other woods. The varnished teak did not have a very noticeable change. It might have gotten a little darker, and once again the texture is as smooth as it started. Next, we have mahogany. 1 unfinished and 1 varnished. The unfinished lost its orange color and became rougher, especially on the ends. The varnished mahogany got slightly more yellow. I didn't notice any mold growth on the mahogany or the teak. For cedar, I had 1 unfinished, 1 varnished, 1 burnt, and 1 burnt and varnished. The unfinished cedar lost some of its color and has gotten darker on the top. I'm assuming this is some type of mold again. Similar to the bleached oak, these dark areas seem to correlate with what used to be a lighter wood grain. The unfinished cedar is the roughest of all the woods I tested. The varnished cedar seems unchanged, except for a slight yellowing in color. The burnt cedar got significantly lighter over time, and surprisingly is still very smooth, smoother than all the woods discussed thus far. The varnished burnt cedar also got slightly more yellow, but other than that did not change. For cedar, my biggest takeaway is that burning the wood significantly reduces the roughness brought on by weathering. For pine, I have 1 unfinished, 1 varnished, and then 2 levels of burning, each with 1 varnished. The unfinished pine has definitely performed well thus far. It is the smoothest of all the woods tested. It does seem to be speckled with some mold and has gotten darker. Even though the face is smooth, the ends are very rough. I did not see any noticeable difference with the varnished pine. Much like the burnt cedar, the pine got much lighter over time. It's rougher than the unfinished pine and has a slight warp. The varnished burnt pine got slightly lighter and more yellow. The charred pine did not change aesthetically, and I still get black on my fingers when I touch it. It did, however, warp a lot. The varnished charred pine had no significant changes to the surface, but also warped a lot. Overall, I think the pine doesn't handle the burning as well as the cedar. Reflecting on this study, I don't feel the results were very drastic. In general, the varnished pieces had no change, and the unvarnished pieces got rougher and lost some of their color. I intend on continuing the weathering process of these materials to see if more noticeable changes happen over winter and potentially next spring.